Hey everybody. Yeah, this wasn't what I had planned. I had a totally different video plan structure thing that I was going to do where I was going to explain, the new title and tell you about all the new things that I was going to be doing and all that stuff. And, well, that all kind of fell apart because I was having a bunch of technical issues. And it's been almost a year since the last time I posted anything. And I'm really desperate to get stuff back up because I got a lot to talk about. So I decided to download some new software that allowed me to do this type of thing that I didn't have before. So that being said, I came across this because I happen to be subscribed to these people. This is Breaking Points. Now, like I was trying to say in the video I was going to make, this isn't really a political channel. I just like to pay attention to things. And I just happened to come across this. Like I said, I'm subscribed to them because I like to keep up with stuff and get people's opinions on things. And this was by far an opinion that I found questionable. Now, it's coming from the guy you're seeing right here on the screen right now. His name is Saagar. Enjeti, I believe that's his last name and how you pronounce it. And his take on this particular missing woman and people's responses to her being missing and other missing people has me a little perplexed. Because if I didn't know any better, he was coming off as a bit of a racist. Now, I know he's supposed to be right-wing, but he's supposed to be one of the sensible right-wingers that, doesn't like Trump, but also believes in, fiscal responsibility. Anyway, he had a take that involved another MSNBC anchor by the name of Joy-Ann Reid, who simply asked a question because she just happens to be a woman of color in the sea of mostly white guys and Rachel Maddow. And Saagar took exception to it. It's not his taking exception to it that bothered me. It was his response to how he took exception to it. And I can't be one of those videos that just, edit stuff in, because then people were like, you took it out of context, or you did some movie switcheroo trickery or something. So I wanted to make sure you heard the whole thing in his own words, because this is not an opinion show, it's an observation show. And this is merely what I've observed. So I'm going to let it play for a bit, and I know my mom hates this because she sat next to me watching enough YouTube videos. I usually pause and I start talking through it. And that's for a good reason, because of the whole fair use thing. Apparently, if I don't do something transformative, it's just stealing content. And I am not a content thief. So I pause, I'm going to talk through it because it's kind of required. Also, that's the way I watch things, period. Because I'm that far ahead of the game. So, without further ado, here's the video.
All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, by now, you may have heard of the case of Gabby Petito. She was a young 22-year-old girl. She set off across the country this summer in a van with her
At this point, he's going to tell us the entire story. So, you don't need to hear from me. He's going to tell you.
Social media and her popular YouTube account. Now, the case actually has captured national attention after Petito's remains recently were identified in Grand Teton
Remember
National
those words,
Park.
national
Preliminary
attention.
finding is that her death was sadly caused by a homicide. Now, before I get to the specifics of the case, let's just say her death has caused a lot of takes. One of the most popular is this: who cares? People go missing every day. MSNBC's Joy-Ann Reid, in particular, was outraged at the attention on Petito's death, saying it's a case of missing white lady syndrome. Let's take a listen.
If you've been watching the news for the past few days or on Twitter or TikTok, you're probably familiar with the name Gabby Petito.
I am.
The 22-year-old aspiring social media influencer who was reported missing after her fiancé returned from their van life excursion without her. On Sunday, human remains believed to be Petito's were found in a national park in Wyoming. An autopsy is scheduled for tomorrow to confirm the identity. Now, it goes without saying that no family should ever have to endure that kind of pain, and the Petito family certainly deserves answers and justice. But the way this story has captivated the nation has many wondering, why not the same media attention when people of color go missing? Well, the answer actually has a name: missing white woman syndrome, the term coined by the late and great Gwen Ifill.
Get that off the screen. Okay, I question that highly. That there's an answer for this. It's called missing white lady syndrome. That's not an answer. That's just a description. It's a title, but I don't think it's an answer as to why they did it. And since Gwen Eiffel is no longer with us, I can't ask her, what exactly do you mean by that? So, apparently, you'd have to go around, search Google, or if you're not into being searched while you're searching, go DuckGo, and find out what Gwen Eiffel meant by missing white woman syndrome. But by far, it is definitely not an answer to why, when women of color go missing, they don't make national news. The key here is national news. We shall continue.
To describe the media and public fascination with missing white women like Laci Peterson or Natalie Holloway, while ignoring cases involving missing people of color.
Were you recently injured in a car accident? Look at this
Are
check
you
for
kidding me?
$160,000. If you're looking to
Okay,
get money,
that's
you're owed
messed
for an
up.
injury.
How are you going to show an ad in
Now
the middle of
look,
that?
is race a part of national
Thank you.
coverage? 100%. And the cases of Natalie Holloway and Laci Peterson were actually sensationalized 2 decades ago. But what the entire media is missing here is that they were second to this story, not first. The reason that Petito's case gained such salience online is it was born of interest online. TikTokers, YouTubers, Instagram people, they considered Petito one of their own, and they got involved in the case to piece together the pieces that the cops had very
Oh, well, good for her. Having so many internet friends on the internet. Meanwhile, people in real life who don't have a screen in front of their face for a living have missing people and, what? They just deserve to be missing because they didn't get enough people to like them online? This is a weird take. Now, I'm going to let him finish. Very much a Kanye thing here. I'm going to let him finish, but this ain't looking so hot.
obviously missed. And here's the thing. The facts of this case are actually crazy. After Petito's family lost touch with her in August of 2021, her boyfriend showed up back in Florida 2 weeks later with the van that they were traveling in, and she wasn't there. Obviously, they had a lot of questions. What's going on, Brian? Where's Gabby? Then, police showed up to his house to ask him, and he wouldn't talk to them. According to the Petito family, he wouldn't talk to them either.
Oh, okay. So, if everything hadn't looked suspicious when a person went missing, nobody would be asking, I wonder why this person is missing. I don't think that's how missing people work, Saagar. I think any time a person is missing that you're expecting to see at any time, whether the circumstances seem suspicious or not, people are like, hey, somebody's missing. That's how you notice when things are missing, because they're not where they're supposed to be. No matter how it looks, no matter what the optics are. Kind of crazy that you think, well, if they were supposed to be gone with the van and then the van showed up and they were with it and then disappeared, it is less likely that the person is missing? I'm like, even if they went missing from that point on, they would still be missing. I'm the only one who I mean, let me know if I'm wrong here. Let me know if I'm crazy. But a missing person's a missing person. That's why they're called missing people. Regardless of the circumstances or the optics. But hey, I'm not a journalist. I don't get paid to do this. So.
On September 15th, after Brian was named a person of interest in this case, he also went missing, according to that family, and nobody knows where the hell he is today. As people online became aware that Gabby was missing,
Thank you for just proving my point. Hey, nobody can find him. Now he's missing. Okay, well, she had the online presence. He didn't. So then the news should die the second he goes missing because he's not as popular, right? I mean, with that logic, we should be like, well, we found her. We're done here. But now we're like, hey, where did he go? Because he's missing. And the circumstances for what she is missing are uncontroversial. He just stopped being in places where people expected him to be. It's not like somebody showed up in his van and he wasn't with it. So we can't use that excuse. Because now we're looking for him. Interesting.
Swell of online sleuths actually became involved, and what received particular attention was a resurfaced body camera footage of a police stop of the couple in Moab, Utah, where Brian and Gabby were actually involved in a fight on August 12th, 2021. A bystander in Moab saw Petito and Laundrie arguing, in which Petito apparently hit Laundrie in the arm as he was keeping her away from her phone. Now, that bystander heard Petito say, quote, "Why do you have to be so mean?" And he was so concerned, he actually called it in as a domestic dispute. Now, that call told police, quote, "We drove by, a gentleman was slapping the girl. We stopped, they ran, and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, he hopped in the car, and they drove off together." Now, body camera footage reveals that after that couple was stopped.
Now, here's where his real story should have been. Here's what he really should have been upset with. Wait a minute, you're telling me that a bunch of people witnessed this man abusing this woman before she went missing? Cops actually showed up with body cam footage. None of this, oh, our body cams weren't on stuff. They were ready to record every single detail for this, oh, I'm just going to say it, white couple. They sat for several minutes as she cried, trying to describe things, and he just stared off in the back, gaslighting her in front of the police officers, acting as if, you know, he had just appeared on the scene, like, I don't even know what happened. I just got here. I don't even know who her boyfriend is. I hope he doesn't come back. He sounds like a real meanie. Like, this is the, I think you should leave now, hot dog guy driving a car through the store meme in real life. He just sat there and was like, I mean, just look at her, man. It's just, you know, what can I tell you, cops? And the cops, apparently, spoiler alert, were like, well, we didn't see anything happen. We don't know if anything happened. She looks distraught. He looks like he couldn't give a shit. And we had no probable cause to do anything in order to run this person in. Our hands were tied at the moment. And yet, there are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of videos of police officers playing ridiculous, wicked versions of Simon Says with black people inside their cars, where they's like, I smell weed on you, and alcohol, alcohol weed, pulling them out the cars, busting out windows, tasing them just because, killing them just because, saying they were resisting arrest for charges that we have yet to think up because we didn't have any reason to stop them. This guy, with two witnesses, saying, hey, he was smacking the shit out of this girl. And their response is, well, I mean, he's not smacking the shit out of her now. So, I guess we should just leave and hope that everything just turns out okay. Like a Bond villain. Like, well, you know, I got James Bond in the trap. I'm sure, you know, if I stick around, I'm just going to see the inevitable splitting of two as his laser goes through his body or whatever. So, I'm going to leave now. But when it comes to people of color, man, you could be unarmed, have no arms, be outside in your home, open carrying in an open carry state, and the cops will escalate in order to find a way to put you in handcuffs. This guy's just sitting out here glaring like some evil gargoyle while the cops are standing there, and they don't even push his buttons at all. Don't even make the effort. All of a sudden, we got all the good cops who actually follow the letter of the law when your skin tone changes to something lighter. They come to a domestic dispute thing. This time, there's a guy named Jacob Blake who got shot 7 times in the back after getting beat up by the cops because he tried to get back into the car with his kids. They're kindly asking him if he has any weapons on him. They didn't ask Jacob Blake. They already beat him up and patted him down, so they're like, well, then the gun or weapon must be in the car with the kids. And shot him 7 times point blank in the back. And this guy walks away untouched. And now the cops are like, oh, hon, if only we had known. If only you had been consistent, maybe. If you're going to give this kind of bad service to everybody, why aren't you giving it to the actual bad guys? Why are you sitting here having lawsuits against your police departments and stuff because you beat up the wrong people while real criminals are walking around killing YouTubers and TikTokers? This is on you guys. And yet, Saagar doesn't make that report. We used to have a show called America's Most Wanted, which told you about the most wanted people in the entire country. You get missing people, and it's like, do we do milk cartons anymore? If not, look in a penny saver or something. Indigenous women are like routinely being kidnapped and killed. None of that makes national news. Even though some people disagree with it, trans women, same thing. But anyway, none of that national news. I gotta find that out from Vice. Or from like BuzzFeed. Or something like that. I gotta go to AJ Plus in order to find out this news. But if I go to CNN, if I go to MSNBC, people of color missing all the time. Murdered all the time. Unless it's done by something that they can sell as sensational news, doesn't make the cut. If he had made that argument when it comes to certain news, but you got to give me an example of like a black woman being murdered in exactly the same fashion and it also making national news. National news is the key. But we don't know about any people of color who disappeared going into the woods while their boyfriends came back and said, and I ain't talking. I'm sure it's happened, but I know about the white woman that was found dead in Aruba as her recently married husband came back from their honeymoon and acted like, oh yeah, she was coming later. I don't know who does that on a honeymoon, but that's just kind of weird. But I know about that. That made national news. I know about this woman. It made national news. Local news maybe talks about people of color. Nationally, not a thing. Heck, this show right here, Breaking Points, it's technically not a national show. It's an internet show, just like any other internet news show. They don't even take the time to do it because they just bring you their internet version of the MSNBC and CNN stuff that already exist. So they don't talk about it either. So if he's taking it personally, he should be like, you know what, you're right, we should do more. We can do more. We're not controlled by that corporate conglomerate. We're supposed to be independent. We're independent news. Let's independently make news that would be seen as unviable and unsellable to advertisers and make it go mainstream because we have that kind of platform. That would have been an interesting take. But instead we went with this. Now, I know he's got more to say, and you're like, well, you're kind of talking over it now. Well, fine. Here we go. Here's the rest of what he's going to say.
Petito was in very obvious distress when talking to the officers. So for those who are just listening here, the audio, it's a little bit muffled. Here's a very small tidbit that just gives you an idea of what it was like.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just some days I have really bad OCD, and I was just cleaning and afraid to get back in the before, and I was apologizing to him and saying, I'm sorry that I'm so mean.
Now look, according to the officers, she was like that the entire time. She was distraught emotionally and was apologizing over and over for...
Now, You don't have to actually have been in an abusive relationship with somebody, but clearly she's in an abusive relationship with this guy. He hits her, and she apologizes for making him hit her. Clear-cut, classic sign of abuse. The cops are supposed to be trained to recognize this kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, they're not social workers. We should probably defund them. Let's continue.
Being mean to her boyfriend, even though a caller said something otherwise. It doesn't take a genius to see some pretty telltale signs of domestic abuse here. But the cops wrote it off.
Even Saagar saw it.
They split them apart, asking the boyfriend to spend the night in a hotel while she slept alone in a van. Now, from there, things get even stranger. She posted on Instagram on Utah on August 25th, and then her mother received a strange text.
Now, see, that part I did not know. Asked him to sleep in a hotel while she stayed alone in a van. What kind of stupid-ass solution was that to begin with? If he's abusing her, and he entertains himself by abusing her, he's going to want to continue to be entertained. So he could easily just hop on an Uber, get back to the van, and beat the shit out of her again, and possibly kill her. How are you ensuring somebody's safety by saying, you go stay in a hotel, and you stay right here in this empty field out in the middle of nowhere? So let's say he stayed in a hotel, and she still ended up dead. Once again, how was this helpful? So now we got a killer on the loose, and nobody has any idea who did it. And he still has to drive that van back once they're done, clearing it for evidence or whatever. Or he's got to find another way home. They keep the van, he still comes back without her, and she's still dead. This is a stupid-ass idea from these cops. They are the actual story here. As well as her being disappeared, it's them facilitating her disappearance. But for some reason, it's Joy Reid that's the problem. Because she brought up a question about colored people. How dare she? How could she? This is ridiculous. Let's continue.
Saying that she was going to Yellowstone and would have no cell service on August 30th. That was 5 days later.
How very
11
suspicious.
days after that, she's officially reported missing after not being heard from, and that her boyfriend she was traveling with shows up back at his house in Florida with a van and no girlfriend. All of this.
Florida's also a dead giveaway too.
Who then came to the boyfriend's house to seize the van in question. But then when they try to ask him questions, he refers them to his lawyer, refusing to speak with them. What do the cops do? Nothing. They said her disappearance was odd, but that there was no evidence of a crime in their own jurisdiction of Florida, so they just took the van and then they left. They didn't put a car, they didn't pressure the family, nothing. So, lo and behold, a few days later, when the FBI decides that the laundry is now a person of interest, he's nowhere to be found. They literally let him skip town, even though the dude showed up at his house with the van they were both in and refused to talk to them. Seriously, am I crazy? Is this not the easiest case to figure out ever? While the police were apparently letting the prime suspect...
No, you're not crazy about the craziness of how this case was handled. You're crazy for asking a black woman on another TV network, why are you asking about colored people? When it should be obvious that the reason we're talking about this white woman is because the circumstances are so crazy. So people just normally getting kidnapped by normal kidnappers and getting normally murdered by normal murderers. It's old hat. No need to discuss that. That happens to like every colored person that ever goes missing. If you really want us to try to find you, make your kidnappings more exciting. Make your kidnappings more original, Have somebody kidnap you in a clown suit or something and get it on camera and then disappear for a while. And then maybe you'll make national news. Are you fucking kidding me? This can't be your take. I'm gonna let this video finish. But it seems like that's what I'm hearing. It seems like he's saying, get more Instagram and Twitter followers, and then maybe we'll try to come find you. I hope I'm wrong, but let's keep going.
Oh, people online were actually surfacing details everywhere. Geolocating, figuring out her past whereabouts. In fact, it was a pair of YouTubers themselves who happened to drive past Petito's van on August 27th in Grand Teton National Park, who then reviewed their footage and alerted authorities to the location where her body was eventually discovered. Various sightings of the couple have been reported, also on social media. The explosion of interest and a nationwide manhunt now underway for laundry at this time. But the review of the details is merely to underscore that both this is a pretty extraordinary case in which a person who already had a following on social media was involved in an objectively crazy situation, and where others sought to do what they could to try and locate her. And the nature of so much of MSNBC and CNN coverage in the last several days has been to essentially try and shame people for caring or tuning in or trying to help. But they ignore that unlike in the 90s, they aren't the ones who actually created the interest. It was organic. It actually stemmed from the facts themselves. I really don't know how many times we have to discuss on this show. Shaming people is likely to have the opposite reaction.
Yes, shaming people is likely to have the opposite reaction. That's why you didn't spend the last 3.5 years shaming Donald Trump during his entire presidency. You weren't shaming him. You were merely making very nice, moderate, polite suggestions about how he was ruining the country. Shaming people gets you nowhere. It gets you your own damn show, apparently. That's one thing it gets you. You shame the right people. So make up your mind here. Who's making the news? The people or the networks? It's called Saagar's Breaking Points right there on the screen. You want to break some points? Go ahead. It's your show. Go on and do it. Why aren't you doing it, Saagar? You're going to tell me that it's because there isn't enough interest online? Or are you just not interested? You are online. Is that really where we're going with this? So people of color don't have enough friends online. People of color don't have enough Twitter followers. People of color don't have enough TikToks views to be seen as needing to be equally found. That's amazing. If you hadn't let this laundry guy go, you would have actually found her killer. Meanwhile, we still don't know who killed Biggie and Tupac. They had tons of followers. They had tons of fans. They had people following them everywhere, except the night they were killed. People are still saying, hey, when are we going to find out who killed those two guys? Well, I guess we're just never going to find out. I mean, we got people who are still trying to discover the true identity of Jack the Ripper, and nobody's trying to find out who killed Biggie and Tupac. So, if you're saying race didn't play a thing into this, popularity did? How's that better? That's still just as fucked up. You shouldn't have to be popular for people to care whether you went missing or not. Trump could go missing right now. I don't like that guy. Nobody likes that guy. But if Donald Trump went missing, you'd still talk about it. I'm not really sure where this is going. But asking, hey, how come we don't do the same for people of color? And you don't go, well, why don't we do the same for people of color? Have we done the same for people of color? Let me check. I don't know. I'm a journalist. Maybe I could find this thing out before I say anything. Obviously, he couldn't find one instance in where a person of color got the exact same treatment as anyone else. Because he's almost done with his thought. You think this would be a good time to bring it up. Let's see if it actually happens.
Action when you're trying to elevate something. And number two, I cannot think of a better opportunity than for anyone discussing the case, as I am right now, to draw attention to two big crises that we have in our society. One is domestic abuse, which has actually skyrocketed during the pandemic, and for which so many women suffer. And two is missing persons. Advocates are 100% correct in noting how many minorities go missing in the country. There are a lot of resources that people should look into if they're interested in helping and being aware to find other people who are missing. But what people who are apparently well-intentioned always miss is that talking down to people almost never works. While others have consternation at looking at the interest in the case, I actually see a good thing. The authorities failed Gabby Petito, but a lot of people stepped up to try and bring closure to her family, and hopefully justice for her murderer. And I choose to see hope in that, and I see it as a spirit that perhaps that we can build on and help as many people as possible. I'm curious what you think, Crystal, because I think the reflexive nature to be like, oh, it's missing white girl. Hey, guys.
Wow, and that's where the clip ends. You don't even get to see Crystal's response to it. That's amazing. Apparently, the rest of us were not curious as to what her take was. I guess you gotta watch the show when it's being live streamed in order to find out what the white woman next to him actually thought about missing white woman syndrome. You'd think that would have been pertinent to the clip, but apparently not. I mean, if they're there and they're like, hey, this person's missing, how come you're not talking about it? You don't go, well, you're talking about it, so you go find them. How is that in any way, shape, or form answering the question, hey, how come when it comes to people of color, they're missing, impossible murders don't make national news? Did that answer the question at all? I didn't see an answer for it. In fact, he obfuscated race at the beginning and mentioned like zero about it. He went off into, domestic abuse is something we need to talk about. He didn't really talk about it. Okay, short segment. Fine. They had to wrap it up. Yeah, and move on to the next thing. But it's your show, remember? It's not like you got commercials. You're on the internet. And besides, if your advertisers wanted to show a commercial, they would just bust into the freaking video and just show it anyway in the middle of you talking, like they did in the middle of my recording. So, Saagar, you're coming off as a bit of a racist here. You're saying, hey, does race actually play a role in this? And you're like, no, it doesn't, and I'll give you absolutely no reason to think otherwise. In fact, all I'm going to do is reiterate everything about this case and why I think it's important, but not why I thought other people would think it was more important than, any other missing person of color, what you failed to mention in your breaking point. You couldn't even show a connection or anything. You couldn't be like, hey, we were talking about this person just a week ago or something. You brought nothing to the table. Except, I don't think it's about race. And that's that. Now, I have to admit, I wasn't trying to find Gabby Petito, and I haven't been trying to find anybody else. I own it. So, purely, it's not a race thing for me. Well, that lack of proof kind of makes you think, well, it must be a race thing then, because you didn't disprove it, and you had an opportunity to do that, and didn't take it, and it's very disappointing. And remember, this is not an opinion. This is exactly what I observed. This is what he told me, this is what he told us, this is what he showed us. When it comes to women of color disappearing, he's not interested because nobody else seems interested. He's not a good enough person to be interested on his own. You have to make him interested. And so far, the only people that have his interest are missing white women. It's like some kind of syndrome or something. It's weird. Anyway, I guess that's the end of my video. And other than a little mild editing on my part, that's pretty much all the raw footage right there. Can't say I manipulated anything. Everything you saw was the complete deal. The real deal. Because that's how I roll. So, this has been Fad Optics, and I don't know a good tagline to end this with. I guess, I'm just trying to make the best out of a fad situation. Leave a better suggestion in the comments below if you got one. Anyway, see ya! My God, this is taking a long time. Are you still recording all this? I'm just... Thank you.